Hello and welcome to JamHammer. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at how to paint Necrons from the Szarekhan dynasty according to the Warhammer 40k Imperium magazine. This partwork series produced by Hachette and Games Workshop provides you with a magazine plus a selection of miniatures, paints or hobbying tools each week. Since this works by gradually introducing more colours as it goes on, the painting guides that are featured in the magazines can be a bit scattered. However, in the most recent unwrapping video on JamHammer, we received issues 28 and 29. Spread across these two issues were the contents of the Necron Warrior box set, so enough parts to make 10 models with either weapon options, plus 3 Scarab bases. Issue 28 focused on the assembly instructions. Issue 29, on the other hand, provided a guide to painting the miniatures using the tools and paints that have been provided with the collection up to this point, so we'll be following this. Usually, I only review the contents of the magazines and work out the value of the included Games Workshop products, but I thought it'd be interesting to start using the information from the magazines and see what results we can get by following their painting guides. I usually opt to use Vallejo paints, so instead of these, I'll only be using the recommended Citadel paints and brushes. I also thought now would be a good time for this, as at this point in the Imperium magazine collection, we seem to have all the necessary colours to get these warriors up to a battle-ready standard. In the second issue from this collection, we received these 3 warriors armed with Gauss flayers. These appear to be the sculpts that are included in the Necron introductory paint set from Games Workshop. We also seem to have acquired most of the paints from this set, which also suggests a Szarekhan colour scheme. The minis are easy fit, so perfect for these beginner boxes as you can assemble them without glue. Unlike the Ultramarines in the last painting video, these warriors aren't sculpted in such a way as to lock them into any specific dynasty, so they can be included in any faction you like. On the downside though, they only come with the one weapon option. I'm opting for Gauss Reapers for my Novok warrior blobs, so these 3 warriors won't be in my army and will be great for following the magazine's recommended paint scheme in this video. First things first then, I'm going to be putting down a base coat of Runelord Brass. There's no mention of a primer here that I'd always recommend for a longer lasting finish that's more robust, as well as providing a better texture for your base coat to adhere to. Instead, we're going straight in with that Runelord Brass. The magazine states that we want a ratio of 4 parts paint to 1 part water, this being metallic, so something like this consistency. They also say we should be painting every part of the mini using this colour, even those parts that won't be brass on the finished model. This seems like an unnecessary move, as this is going to take a long time to cover, waste our paint, and mean that these other areas are going to be thick with paint and lose some detail. No worries when we're applying our first colour and we slip over, but to intentionally paint areas that won't be this colour is a strange suggestion. Still, we're following the guide, so I'll apply this all over. That first coat is finished now, and you can see that some of that grey plastic is still showing through and the coverage is a bit patchy. Not to worry, as the guide says we need to apply another 2 coats all over the warrior with the little starter brush that was included in the magazine series, so settle in, this could really take a while. 2 coats applied, and to me this is looking fine. We've got no more of that grey plastic coming through now, and we have a smooth, even finish. But the guide says 3 coats, so on with another all-over layer of Runelord Brass. It really did take forever to apply these everywhere with the small brush. Painting a whole unit this way is going to be very time consuming. Our 3 coats of Runelord Brass are on, and we have one very shiny Necron. Onto a regular acrylic paint now, Corax White. The guide doesn't mention watering down any of these colours, so I'm tempted to put them on straight out of the pot, but they must be assuming common sense at this point, and I'll water it down to 3 parts paint to 1 part water. It does say that we need to apply 3 coats of this colour too, and this is going on the cables on the underside of the Gauss weapons, the recessed details on the barrels of these guns, and carefully into the eyes of our Necrons as well. They don't mention the rocks on the base of the warriors or the cables dangling from their chest, but judging from the pictures, we need to paint these with Corax White too. One coat done, and that's pretty good coverage from this paint. Very impressive, but it would benefit from a second coat just to make sure that none of that brass is coming through. We'll apply another thinned coat to these areas and let that dry before applying the third coat that they recommend. Onto Abaddon Black now, and this colour is going on the gun casings here, so we'll have to be careful not to get this dark colour onto the areas we've just painted white. Then we're painting each area of the Necron skeleton black too, so all of the exposed joints, as well as the hips, spine, back of the head, and their legs. Having to be very careful again not to splash this on the Runelord Brass armour plates. This is pretty difficult to do, and as you can see, I managed to get quite a bit of this on those areas we've just spent a long time painting, so these will need to be tidied up later. And we're on to the next colour in the guide, Leadbelcher. This is going on the barrels and the blade of the gun like this. Then onto the ribbed cable that drops down, as well as the exposed grills in the weapon housing. We're also applying this to the pistons on the outside of their legs and on their neck here. Next stage in the guide is to apply some Nuln Oil. We're only putting this on those areas that we've just painted with Leadbelcher, so ensure they're dry first. Then we're applying that shade over the top, so the barrel and the undersling of the gun again, the grills, the cable, and the pistons. Plus the other side of the gun too. Notice that I painted the handle with Leadbelcher here. It wasn't mentioned in the guide, but again, after looking at the pictures, it looks like it was painted with this colour. Make sure to move this shade around and don't let it pool in any one area. Another quick bit of shade here, and that's with Agrax Earthshade. They only mention the rocks on the Scarab bases, but we've got one here on our Warriors base too, so I'm going to apply some of this. Final colour in the guide now, and that's Canoptek Alloy. We'll be applying this to the shoulder plates, so getting the tops of these first. Then just going to angle this down like this, so I can reach the underside of these too. Next, we're applying this to the faceplate and trying not to get this over those white eyes. And we're done! I'm going to take some time first to just tidy up those bits that I slipped over with the black. So it's a few parts of the armour panel that need going over with Runelord Brass like this. Then I need to reapply the white recessed areas on the gun where I slipped over with the black paint. And now back over with the black to make sure that gun barrel is neat, and just catch a few bits of the skeleton that I caught with our metallics. So overall, this was a drawn out and pretty frustrating way to paint these. Personally, I'd recommend working from the inside out on a model to make this quicker and easier. So first of all, I'm going to get the medium dry brush from issue 11, and then I'm going to use that to apply a quick all-over coat of our Abaddon Black, thinned to a ratio of 3 parts paint to 1 part water. I'm painting this on in real time, and look how much quicker this is. So that's done already. Leave this to dry, and then apply another thin coat of black all over, and we have all those difficult to reach parts of the skeleton already done. Now I'd apply Runelord Brass to the armour plating. These areas are much easier to reach, and this metallic colour will look even better over a black base. After just one coat of Runelord Brass, we have this nice burnished effect, and much less tidying up needed later. Then we can use that Corax White to pick out the cables, eyes, and the centre of those recesses in the barrel. if you then water your paint down so that it's very runny like this, you can just dab it into those areas and it will flow through and you're done. This took a fraction of the time and garnered pretty similar results to the guide. If you wanted a shinier brass colour on those armour plates, then by all means apply another coat. For myself, I wanted to get a more degraded appearance to the Mini, so after applying Leadbelcher next to the gun and the exposed pistons, I'm grabbing that dry brush again and, actually using it for its intended purpose now, I'm going to work some of that Leadbelcher into the bristles. Wiping most of it off on some kitchen paper, and now applying this lightly over the skeleton and the armour plates. This will make the metal look a little worn, like these machines have been underground for centuries. Plus, it will add a bit more of an interesting metallic feel to the skeleton that I think looks a bit flat on the guide painted Mini. I noticed that they're including Canoptek Armorshade in issue 33 of the Imperium magazine. I'm guessing that they'll probably be covering the armour plating with this. Interestingly, they included Agrax Earthshade, which we also received in issue 12, in that introductory painting box, so I'm going to try applying this instead. First, I painted in the shoulders and the face with a coat of that Canoptek Alloy. Again, one coat over our black base is looking pretty nice. I'll let this dry, and then apply the Agrax Earthshade all over the armour plating. It's created a really stained armour that I think adds to the dilapidated effect of the sculpt, plus it's added some depth into the recesses on the warrior. So this Mini is now ready for battle in half the time. However, there's one crucial part missing, those green glowing weapons. I'm guessing, from that introductory paint set again, that we would now apply Tesseract glow over those white parts. We don't have this yet in the Imperium collection, so I'm going to have a go at trying to make my own. First, I'm going to add a light dry brush of Corax White around the gun of my other Mini here to try and convey the light emanating from it. Next, I've got a yellow and a green paint that I've borrowed from my Vallejo paint set, and I'm going to combine these. About 2 parts yellow to 1 part green until we get this colour. The hue is about right, but it's still a bit too dark, so I'm going to mix that in with the remaining white that's still wet on my palette. Looking good. We could just water this down now so that it flows and has the translucency of a contrast paint, but for an even better consistency, I'm going to mix in a drop or two of acrylic medium. And then apply this over those parts of the Mini that were left white, so the cables, the recesses in the barrels, and the eyes. Not putting this on very accurately, as any slippage will hopefully create a nice little glow effect. You could do this with any bright colour that you've thinned down, such as the Trollslayer orange from Imperium issue 20. Or, at some point, I assume Imperium will include Tesseract glow for this purpose. And there we go! These Necron warriors are charged up with Gauss energy and ready to reclaim the lost empire of the Necron tier. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking it, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the bell to be notified of new videos being released. Overall, I think this is a great palette for your minis on the tabletop. I think missing out on the primer was a bit of a mistake, and the order of the paints just didn't make a lot of sense to me. It also took a really long time to get one Mini to battle ready standard using the recommended starter brush and applying unnecessary coats of paint to the skeleton and gun. I hope that the guide on how I would paint them if I were running a Szarekhan army were useful, as it was much quicker to achieve similar results. There'll be more videos about this Warhammer 40k partwork series being released in the future, so please do keep an eye out for more Imperium content coming soon to JamHammer. In the meantime, there are plenty of other videos available on the channel, including a few that are on screen now for you to click on. Thanks again for watching.